conference. Two lines of buildings faced each other across the width of the main and only street. If Jim had turned and climbed the steep incline behind them to its top, he might have seen the dot of Fort Apache, 16 miles due west, and, perhaps, caught sight of the smoke from White River chimneys, 18 miles northwest. He would have seen, too, surrounding him like a dark green island in a sea of desert, vast forest land, and in the distance the snow-crowned peaks of Arizona's Blue Mountains. But Jim was only interested in the conference taking place below. Earlier he'd talked his older brother Tom into leaving the shop to come out and watch it. "By God," he said, lowering the telescope, "I never thought we'd see the day old Braided Feather get to feeling peaceable." "We never would have, either," said Tom, "if it hadn't been for Finley." "That's right enough," said Jim. He raised the telescope again and chuckled. "Christ a'mighty," he said, "an honest Injun agent. They're as hard to find these days as honest Injuns." His brother grunted and glanced up briefly at the leaden sky. Each time he looked at it, it seemed to have descended lower. "She's going to start to pouring soon," he said. "We'd better hightail us back to town." "Oh, let's wait a while," said Jim. "The meeting can't last much longer." "Jim, they've been an hour already," said his brother, checking his watch. A raindrop spattered across the gold case, and he wiped it off on his coat sleeve. "See, there's a drop already," he said. "We'll get soaked." "Just a mite longer," said Jim, looking intently through the telescope. "We can ride back fast if she starts up." Tom put his watch away and looked over at his brother. When was Jim going to grow up, he wondered. He was 18 already, but he still acted like a kid most times. It made their older brother Al mad. Well, that was nothing much, Tom thought, smiling to himself. What didn't make Al mad? Tom yawned and drew up the collar of his coat. "Suit yourself," he said. He'd wait a little longer anyway. "Can you see good?" he asked. "Yeah, real good," said Jim. Overhead, there was a swishing sound. All right, Captain Lester said irritably. "Any breach of treaty on our part releases his people from the agreement. Good God, what does the man want?" He aimed a stony gaze at the clerk, then looked back suddenly, interrupting Finley as the Indian agent began translating for Braided Feather. "That goes both ways, of course," he snapped. When Finley turned again to the Apache chief and his son, he saw that although they had not understood the content of Lester's words, his tone of voice had been apparent enough. There was a tightening twitch at the corners of Lean Bear's mouth, the faintest additional glitter in the dark eyes of Braided Feather. Finley pretended not to notice. He nodded to the two Apaches, then asked a question. The chief sat in silence a while. Across the table from him, Lester shifted restlessly, the wooden stool creaking beneath his weight. Then Braided Feather nodded once, curtly, and his son grunted, lips pressed together. Finley turned to the captain. "It is agreed, then," he asked. "The band will be supervised by an Apache police force?" "We have already discussed that," said Lester. "Further," said the agent, "that the band will be subject only to Apache courts and juries to be formed?" "Presuming that the members of said courts and juries are acceptable to the United States government," said Lester. "They will be formed with that stipulation," answered Finley. "The point is, the Apaches must be allowed to govern themselves and, when necessary, act as their own judges, mete out their own punishment." "Presuming that this right is not used merely as an excuse for laxity of discipline," said Lester, "it is acceptable." "They will govern themselves, then," Finley said. Lester nodded wearily. Yes, he said. He turned to the clerk. "Put it down," he said. Corporal Herzenbach dipped his pen point into the vial of ink. The sound of it as he wrote was a delicate scratching in the tent, just heard above the flapping of the canvas. Over the distant mountains